During this webinar, you will meet the district, learn more about their demographics, and review the details of their instructional material review process that resulted in customization. Following, we will dive into the process of building a custom book, talk about the end result, and highlight some lessons learned. Before we tackle this webinar, it may help to lay some framework for why customization of instructional materials may seem to be more relevant today. We've heard from our partners that the traditional textbook model is not meeting the needs of the classroom today. One textbook does not meet the needs for every student across the nation. Our students are unique. Our instructional materials should be too. Districts also need flexibility to alter instructional materials based off of current events, unexpected standards changes, or new mandates. And unfortunately, we are all very well aware that the cost of textbooks are at an all-time high and budgets are shrinking, which are making content decisions tougher. Oftentimes, the adoption of materials leave gaps to be addressed. Gaps can range from lack of complex text, lack of support for differentiation, or even gaps in cultural relevance. If the district adopted materials does not meet the needs of your student, the burden is placed on the district or the teacher to supplement as necessary. The report titled Authoring Student Success states that most teachers are spending an average of 7 hours per week searching for appropriate supplemental content and another 5 hours creating their own. This is an additional 12 hours of time beyond their current workload. This data is dated pre-pandemic, so I think it's safe to assume those hours have increased due to the districts needing to adapt instruction to distance learning. We will drop the link to this article in the chat sometime during this presentation. So for those of you who are interested in the Authoring Student Success, feel free to find it in the chat box. The challenges I've identified previously were exactly what a school district in Florida was faced with during a world language adoption. In fact, we are all here today to hear the story of how Pinellas County Schools addressed these challenges and created personalized instructional materials within less than a year's worth of time. We are very lucky to be joined today by Pam Benton, pre-K through 12 World Languages Specialist in Pinellas County, Florida. We're about to go on a journey to talk about how the Florida World Language adoption led Pam to a decision that resulted in custom materials. To set the landscape, here's a little bit more about the background of Pinellas County Schools in Florida. Pinellas County is the 8th largest district in the state of Florida and the 27th largest school district in the United States. In Pinellas, they have over 100,000 students pre-K-12 across 140 physical school buildings. And their world language team consists of 150 world language directors, of which 130 of them specifically focus on Spanish. So first, I'd like to welcome Pam. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So the structure that we're going to do the remainder of the presentation is going to be a little bit more of a Q&A portion. So let's start here. Let's start at the very beginning of this. When Florida initiated a world language adoption, can you tell us more about your district's unique needs in world languages? And what battles have you been facing in the adoption of world language materials that was top of mind for you for the next 5 years across your department?
Well, we had not gotten instructional materials money for about 15 or 16 years in Pinellas County for a variety of budgetary reasons. And so I was initially delighted when I heard that we would be participating in the next adoption, which was supposed to be 2023 for our district, or for world languages in the state of Florida. And then suddenly there was a shift in ideas at the state level, and they decided that that we would be participating last year in the adoption process. And if anybody doesn't know what an adoption is basically just a schedule for how often the subject area gets categorical funds from the state to be used to purchase instructional materials. And that, traditionally always meant a textbook. Well, we had not been using a textbook for many years, obviously, because we had not been funded to use a textbook. And we had spent a lot of time developing a lot of our own curriculum that we were using regularly in our classrooms. And so while I was excited that they were going to give me money, I didn't want to go with a traditional textbook because it really wouldn't meet the needs of where our teachers and students are in terms of learning languages nowadays. We wanted to be able to continue to use a lot of resources that we had developed in-house, but we also were working towards using a lot of comprehensible input strategies. And for those of you who are not in world language education, it's comes from the research of Dr. Stephen Krashen on language acquisition. And we've learned that in the last 30 years or so, we've learned that students learn best when they are flooded with lots of comprehensible input. And that's in the form of listening and reading. And so we've gradually been shifting to the use of the comprehensible input strategies in the district, and traditional textbooks don't really meet those needs. So while there was a regular textbook adoption list, that wasn't something that we were really even considering because none of those would allow us to use the comprehensible input strategies, and none of them would provide the kinds of input that we needed. So for Spanish, and that's the main thing we'll talk about today, although we will mention some interesting things we've done with Greek as well. But for Spanish, which is my big language area, of my 150 teachers, 130 of them are Spanish teachers. We wanted to use a lot of things that had been developed by a teacher named Martina Bex, and her curriculum is called Somos. And so we had a number of teachers who were piloting the use of the Somos curriculum, and it's specifically designed so that it incorporates a huge number of comprehensible input strategies. And so we wanted to be able to provide that along with some other small things that we had found and some of our in-house developed materials. And I was really struggling with how to do that. How would I put that all together, and how would we make it? One of the things that has already been mentioned is that, without a traditional textbook, one of the things that's nicest about a traditional textbook is that it usually comes with a workbook. And so teachers don't have to create every single thing that they give to the students. Sometimes there are activities that they can do in a workbook. And since we're not adopting a textbook, we wanted to be able to make teaching this curriculum easier for the teachers. So we wanted to put together kind of our own workbook that went along with the curriculum materials that we were adopting from Somos. And so we went through a little at a time, and we thought to ourselves, I had a team of teachers, what do we need to put together so that it's not very much work for teachers? So teachers don't have to spend a lot of time making photocopies and searching for things. So that was kind of our background there.
That's fantastic. I imagine that the teachers hearing that you want to make their lives easier, we're feeling very refreshed as well. So after you decided that customization was the best method for Pinellas County, what criteria was important for you as you were exploring partners? What were your must-haves and what were your deal breakers?
Well, I have to say, I didn't have customization even as an option in my mind. I really didn't know what we were going to do. We knew basically more or less what we wanted, but I was trying to figure out how to do it. And I'll tell you that number one thing on the list there, copyright clearance, was a big issue for me. And we were trying to figure out how we could purchase curriculum, but we would modify it a little bit and not use all the parts of it and supplement with our things, and how we were going to do that to make it something that was coherent and that teachers could use without it being terribly confusing and them not able to figure it out. How on earth we would get copyright clearance to be able to do this and print and distribute. And so when I got a call from Xanadu, just as part of the regular adoption process, I would get lots of calls from different publishers and different publishing companies asking for a meeting because they all want our business. And so when I heard from Xanadu and I heard what they do, I was really intrigued. And so when I met with the representative from Xanadu, I got really excited because not only can they do all of that copyright stuff that was going to be a huge nightmare for me, but they could take all of those things that are the copyrighted materials that we selected, and they could kind of marry them with all of our things that we created in-house and put it together so that it looks like a coherent, cohesive whole that belongs together. And not only that, but they made it pretty and they made it look like it all belonged together. And then they can do the printing and the distribution. And then, of course, affordability was my other question. They gave me a limited amount of money. So I was very concerned that we wouldn't be able to afford it. So I was cautious when I first talked to Xanadu about it because I thought, oh, there's no way we can do this in a way that I could possibly afford this. And so, as you can imagine, I was absolutely delighted when I learned that not only was it possible, but it was even more affordable than I hoped in my wildest dreams.
Oh, that's fantastic. So the final result was that you in Pinellas County, you and the experts from Pinellas County created 8 custom books in less than a year. So first and foremost, hats off to you and your team of experts. So because the number of books in the short period of time feels impressive, I'm curious, how did you select the courses that you selected?
We selected Spanish 1 through 3 because those are the courses in our district that have the largest number of students. Those are also the courses that have a district common assessment. And the results of that district common assessment are used to determine the VAM score. It's the value added score, but it's part of the teacher's evaluation is how the students do on that exam. And so we really want high quality materials for all of our classes, of course, but we really wanted something special for the Spanish 1 through 3 because those poor teachers had been creating their own things pretty much from scratch for a large number of years. And so we wanted to make it so that it was interesting. I also have the added difficulty with 130 Spanish teachers. There's some turnover each year. People retire, people move away, people get transferred, etc. And so with that turnover, I end up with a lot. We have no shortage of Spanish-speaking people in our area. We have lots and lots of them. And in the last few years, we have tons of new immigrants, especially from Puerto Rico and from Venezuela. And they're here, and maybe they had some other career back in their home country. They were engineers or doctors or lawyers or pharmacists or whatever. And when they get here, you're these well-educated professional people who cannot get a job in their own industry. And so they capitalize on the fact that they are native speakers of Spanish. They take the Spanish exam and they become teachers in our school system. Well, that's wonderful in some ways because that means that we have candidates for our jobs. And I know that's a big struggle in some areas of the country. But the drawback of it is that those people don't know how to teach. They didn't go through an education program. They don't have any idea what to do. One of the main reasons that we selected the Somos curriculum is because it includes day-by-day lesson plans that are really specific. And so that was one of the big reasons behind that. For the Greek readers, what we did was we have been searching and searching. We've provided, luckily we have a referendum here in Pinellas that is specifically for reading materials. And so we were able, year before last, to provide some class sets of readers for every level of every language that we teach, except for Greek, because they just did not exist. And for comprehensible input, it's important to have high interest reading material for the students. They have to be interested in it or it won't work for them. And it also has to be comprehensible. It has to be something that they can understand. Well, I can tell you right now, middle and high school students who are learning Greek don't want to read ABC books. And yet, because of the fact that Greek has a different kind of alphabet than we use for English and for Spanish and French and German and Italian, it makes it a lot harder for the students to learn. And we could not find interesting books for students in Greek that were at a level that our beginning and intermediate Greek students could read. So I ended up approaching Carol Gobb, who is one of the owners of the company Fluency Matters. And it's a company that sponsors the IFLT conference every year, and they produce the Fluency Matters readers. And she has a series of books that are about someone named Brandon Brown that are written for beginning level language students. And I asked Carol for permission, and Xanadu did all the paperwork stuff to make it kosher. And we got permission to translate, and we translated them in-house. I hired a Greek-speaking. We have a huge Greek community in Pinellas County, by the way. That's why we have a Greek program. We translated four of the readers that she had written about Brandon Brown to Greek. And now those are being used in our classrooms. It's amazing. They came out looking exactly the same as these books, and they have these books in Spanish and French and Latin and Italian and Chinese and a number of languages. And these Greek readers look like they were produced by the very same company. So it made the students and teachers who are doing the Greek courses here very, very happy. And then the strategies guide we wanted to create, again, we have some turnover, as everyone does, attrition, etc., in our district, and we wanted to create the strategies guide so that anybody coming in who's going to use the Somos curriculum, or teachers who are not using the Somos curriculum but are teaching a language, would have a guide. And we selected 78 strategies for which are all comprehensible input strategies that we would put in this strategies guide. And each one has a one-page that describes and gives very specific and step-by-step instructions for how to use that strategy. And so it's still in progress because, as you'll hear, COVID-19 hit in the middle of all of this work. And so we were delayed a little bit. So we started out, I had a team of 3 for Spanish 1 and 2, and I had a team of 5 for Spanish 3 who worked with me. And these were teachers. And we were working by pulling them out of work once or twice a month to come together for a full day. And I would start on the work and I would build a little bit of a structure, and then they would come in and build on that and rip it up, and we would discuss it and figure out what we wanted to use and how we wanted to use it and what order it went in, what resources of ours we wanted to include, what things from Somos, and put it all together. And then I worked with the Greek, it's actually a guidance counselor at an elementary school, who is doing the translation of our Greek books, and I worked with her on that. And we didn't actually do that, we just do online meetings, and she tells me her progress, and I don't personally speak Greek, so I can look at what she sends me and it looks very beautiful and lovely. And we have other people that are working on our end to edit, and then we send it off to Xanadu, and they do the amazing work to make it look perfect and wonderful, and just like the readers in all of the other world language classes, which was a really important thing for us, that we didn't want the Greek students to feel like they were different somehow, or less important than our other language classes. We wanted them to feel the same, and boy, oh boy, do these readers do that.
Oh, that's fantastic. So now that we understand the why and the end result, perhaps we can focus on the middle of the project. So over the next 15 to 20 minutes, we're hoping to answer the question, what did the process look like to get from concept to physical materials into the hands of my teachers and students? So let's begin. A little bit about Xanadu. With 20 years of custom publishing experience supporting both higher education and K-12 schools, Xanadu Publishing has been helping districts improve relevancy, equity, and access through customized instructional materials. After you have selected that customization is the best path for your instructional materials, you have complete control over the content, quality, and costs of your K-12 custom book. The process is outlined with 3 simple steps. First, A is assemble. You identify the content, appropriate sequencing, and unit development. Feel empowered to incorporate copyrighted content, copyrighted materials into your custom book. Second, B is build. You choose design and production elements that suit your audience and budget. Third, C is circulate. You choose the best method to get the materials delivered to your district or buildings and ensure purchasing that supports your procurement departments. With Xanadu Publishing, we enable districts to take back control of their content, quality, and costs. So let's break down the ABCs by explaining each step and learn more about the decisions that Pam has made in each step. Starting with A, assemble. You choose any content. Xanadu is publisher neutral. The contents of your workbook or reader can be a variety of text excerpts, chapters, district created materials, or online articles from multiple sources. Your goal is to identify the perfect content for your students. If you found your custom materials are enhanced by including copyrighted content items, Xanadu will manage the permissions, indemnifying your district of potential copyright infringement. Xanadu performs a complete and thorough review, including research, permissions clearance, and the management of royalty payments. So Pam, you've mentioned some of this, but I think I'm going to break this down into a couple of different questions for you. So which item, so I'm going to start first with which items did you select and why?
Okay, so we selected, most people are probably familiar with Marzano and Danielson and different evaluation systems, and our district is the Marzano district. And so we first knew that we wanted to incorporate a Marzano scale for teachers and for students into every unit for all of the levels. We also had selected the Somos curriculum, and we had selected, we didn't use every unit that was produced. We didn't use them always in the same order that they were in. You know, she numbers her units and she actually sells them as individual units on Teachers Pay Teachers. And we picked and chose what we wanted to use from all of those. And we also pulled in some supplemental things, some from Martina, some from other people that went well with the areas. Also, because we have those readers that I mentioned earlier, we wanted some information in there about those readers because the teachers were going to be using those in conjunction with everything else that they were doing. Songs are a critical part of the Somos curriculum, and the song lyrics were a really big deal for us. We always use lots of music when in teaching world language, and being able to use these very targeted songs and get the song lyrics was great. We found out, unfortunately, as we went through the process, that we could not get copyright for all of the song lyrics, which meant that we were not able to incorporate those into the teacher guide or the student book. But we did get it for most of the songs. And so that makes it a lot easier, you know, instead of the teachers having to work on their own for 40 songs a year, now they'll maybe have to do it for 3 or 4. So we were really pleased about that. Worksheets, those are more, we provided a lot of readings and then activities that went along with the readings. And then any kind of game or activity that was included in the curriculum, we provided the worksheets, the activity sheets for those. And then with the translation, you know, we did the books by Carol Gobb, the Brandon Brown books.
So with that many materials, I want to ask a couple more questions. With that many materials, there must be some sort of organizational tool or setup that you had to make sure that you were keeping things in order. So I'm going to combine a couple questions here because you have answered some of these, so they're going to be duplicate, but I still think they're important to mention. So the first question is, did you create or use a framework to keep the custom unit development on track? And the second question is, how many individuals were on the creation team, and what criteria did you use to identify those team members?
So in terms of the framework, I worked with the representative from Xanadu, and we pretty much negotiated that. As I explained to Destiny what we wanted to do, and she started to get the big picture, and she shared it with other people at Xanadu, and they kind of came up with an idea of how we would get things to them and how we would do that. And that helped me a lot, because it was a huge, gigantic project, and I am a department of one. In terms of district level personnel, I'm the only one. I don't have a secretary. I don't have anybody that works with me. So I had to rely on teachers who already have very demanding full-time jobs. So I really needed that assistance with figuring out how we were going to do this and how we were going to get things done. So we decided to work on the books one at a time. I did have the Greek project going on the entire time we were working on the Spanish project. And then the strategies guide we started, but COVID-19 caused that to end. So part of our plan was these meetings where I pulled the teachers out of school, as you know, and after spring break, after the second week of March, suddenly that was no longer possible. And I had about 5 or 6 additional days in late March and early April where teachers would be coming in to work on these things, and I didn't get any of those. So I had to do all of the rest of that work completely on my own. And I can tell you it was pretty tough. It's not something you want to do. So in terms of who your team is, I think that I selected people who had been piloting the Somos curriculum for a couple of years, and people who have a lot of experience working on our curriculum writing team. And we do curriculum writing team every summer, where we update our district common assessments. We create curriculum, we create unit assessments, we create resources, we plan training for the teachers. So I used people who are veterans of the curriculum writing process, and then I selected teachers who had been piloting. And for the Somos 1 and 2, it ended up being the same 3 people for the two books, the 2 levels. I would have preferred to have other people, but the intersections were just not there of people who had the writing team experience and who also were piloting the Somos curriculum for me. So, you know, maybe when other people do it, they'll have a little bit, a few more people. But for my Spanish 1 and 2, I just had 3 people. And then for the Spanish 3, I had 5 on that team. And we determined the people based on their experience, their ability to be able to visualize the project, and their desire to want to work on the project. They were really excited about it.
A small but very mighty team.
Yes.
So your district selected to submit units on a rolling basis, and that rolling basis enabled Xanadu to start clearing the permissions while you were completing the full list of the other books. So you've already mentioned this, so I'm going to combine 2 more questions, but how did you stay on track to submit the units on a rolling basis? And do you by chance know how many hours it took you and your staff to complete all of these necessary tasks?
So staying on track, I would say I did not stay on track as I might have if we didn't have the virus to contend with. I did have to ask for some extensions of deadlines and some things like that along the way. But the main thing that helped me stay on track was working with Destiny. And Destiny was the representative from Xanadu who worked with me. And she often touched base with me just to see how things were going, which was wonderful because shockingly, this is not my only job putting this together. And so it was easy for me to get distracted from the project and not necessarily focus on it all of the time just because of so many other things that were going on, particularly from March forward. And so I think the communication with Destiny was probably the most important thing that helped me keep on track, because she knew answers to my questions or found them out very quickly anytime I had a question or a concern. And we were putting the things into a Google Drive, and that was a super easy way for me to handle it. It was not a problem. Once we figured out, Xanadu already had like a spreadsheet that we used with the teachers as we were creating it, as we were going through and doing it unit by unit. And so then I would use that spreadsheet as I was actually creating the actual documents that I put into the Google Drive for Destiny and Tanya and all of the Xanadu people to do their magic on. And so, doing it a little bit at a time and rolling that in there, it also helped too, I think, since we did it on the rolling basis and they were already working on it, they could come back to me as we submitted, say, the first 3 units of the Spanish 1 book. They would come back and they would have questions about what we had asked for and things like that. And it really helped us refine the work as we move forward, because we found out, oh, they'd prefer to have it in this format than in this format, or we need to be more specific here, or, and so I think that because of the excellent communication, that constant communication, we were able to do things in a more organized way than we would have been able to if we were just putting it all together by ourselves.
Thank you. Yes. So as we are closing out the assemble, the next step in the process is to move to the B, the build. So after identifying your content, your perfect workbook or reader is completely designed by you. You choose your custom cover, design, and layout to fit your students' needs. The decision regarding quality and cost of the book are controlled by you. So Pam, when presented with those selections of design and layout, what considerations crossed your mind? How did those decisions change when you had to think about the appropriate print specifications for student materials versus teacher materials?
Okay, so thinking about all of these things, well, first of all, I didn't worry a lot about the design, because I let Xanadu worry about the design. The reality is there's no way we could have gotten this project completed if I was trying to format and design everything in a specific way. And so we tried to make the documents as clear as possible and, you know, work as well as we could, but I really let Xanadu take care of the design. With the cover design, they sent me a variety of choices to choose from, and they were all great, but we were able to choose one. The cover file editing and preparation, Xanadu, as they would complete things, would send a proof to me to look at. I would look at it. I would get the team members to look at it. We would give feedback on it. We would send it back to them. They would update it. They'd send it again. And so it went back and forth quite a bit. And, you know, the flexibility of being able, there were things that we kind of shifted gears on when we saw it in the regular format that we were like, oh, that's just not working for us. We need to do something different. We communicated that to Xanadu, and they were able to make those changes really easily. Things like the table of contents, the page numbers, all of that was important to us to be able to use it, you know, when you're training, when you're talking to teachers about it. I wanted them to be able to contact me and ask questions and get help on things. And, you know, just small things like the table of contents and the pagination, those are really important items when you're, especially when you're taking so many different things and putting them together as a cohesive whole. With the spiral binding, we really wanted the students to be able to, we did for the student workbooks are spiral bound, and the teacher manuals are like loose leaf 3-hole drilled, so that teachers can do a variety of things with those. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. But we went with the spiral binding for the students so that they would be able to fold the workbooks over completely and not take up their entire desk by having to have it completely open, in order to be able to work on that. And then we did the perforation of the pages of the student workbook so that if teachers want, they can actually have the students pull those pages out and hand those pages in. And they can select which pages they want them to pull out and hand in and which ones that will stay in the workbook. And one of the things we really liked, we incorporated a timed writing for every unit in there, which is essentially a page with lines, with word numbers at the ends and a rubric at the bottom so that the students would understand how they were being graded. And a lot of the teachers, that's one of the things I kind of expected teachers would want them to pull that out, and so the teachers could take those home to do scoring on them. But what we found is, well, first of all, now everybody's taking pictures of the work they do and uploading it to Canvas to turn them in. But I think even when they go back to school, I've gotten notice from a number of teachers who say they think that they're going to leave that in the workbooks so that by the end of the year, the workbook is kind of like a portfolio of the student work. And it'll have, you know, all of those timed writings from all of the units for the year, and the student would be able to look from the first unit to the last unit to see, you know, how their writing skills have changed and improved over time. And so I really like that idea. I like that portfolio idea. And the 3-hole drilled teacher manual was great for us. Our teacher manuals are huge. Again, it's got daily lesson plans, it's got activities, it's got all kinds of information, the answer keys for anything that's in the student workbook that requires an answer key. There's a ton of stuff in those. Like, I think that, Tanya, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Spanish 2 teacher's manual was over 900 pages. So we're talking big, big. And so we did the 3-hole drilled teacher manual. The teachers like that. They put them in binders, and then they can pull out just one unit at a time, which is only, you know, 40, 50 pages, something like that. And they can put it in a notebook, and they can take that home with them if they're planning. They can have it open on their desk, et cetera, and they don't have to have the whole thing. Also, they can add pages to it. You know, as they do things, they're making their own notes, they're creating their own things, they're customizing it for each individual person's style and personality. And so they add that. And as we're doing training with the teachers, and we give them additional ideas, etc., they can add those right in at the place where they'll come to that in the curriculum for next year when they're teaching the curriculum. So we're really pleased with what we selected, but we were presented with a lot of options, a ton of options actually, from Xanadu. And they really helped me with thinking through how we wanted to do things, what purpose these things were going to be used for, and what was going to make it the most convenient and easy to use for our teachers and students.
Great, thank you. So wrapping up the B, build section of all of the very carefully chosen decisions that Pinellas County made, we're going to move on to the C, circulation, the final step in the process. So the distribution plan is also determined by you, the school district. We can deliver to district warehouses, multiple school buildings, or have, as we've seen over the past several months due to COVID-19, we've also created home delivery to support the district to ensure students receive materials quickly and safely. So Pam, question to you. When the decision came up regarding shipments, what variables went into the decision-making process?
So we're a large district, quite a large district, and we do have a warehouse, and part of that is designated for instructional materials. And so there were a lot of questions about, Xanadu has a lot of options for all of these things. And so they could very quickly and easily give me specifications for different kinds of deliveries. And then I could run those by the people at the warehouse and say, you know, what kind of lift gate is there? I think lift gate is one of those things. But anyway, you know, they were able to very quickly and easily give me the information I needed so we could determine what was going to work the best. Xanadu has options for actually, they can warehouse your materials if you need to, very affordably. And that was something that we looked at. At one point, we thought that we were not going to be able to fit all of the materials. We bought all 5 years worth in one go. And so we were afraid that we weren't going to be able to warehouse all of them. And so we explored those with Xanadu, and they were so flexible and so helpful in figuring things out. And then in the end, our district shifted gears again. They found some space for us. They decided that we were going to be able to warehouse all of them ourselves. And so Xanadu was really easy to work with for all of those things to make it work. Tracking the deliveries as we were waiting for them to be delivered, getting everything done. It actually turned out to be much less of a headache than I expected it to be. And it was pretty easy, but again, it's because of the good communication.
Well, thank you for saying that. The pleasure was all ours. You were a pleasure to work with. And I think you made our jobs easier, because the hardest part truly are the decisions that you had to make during this entire process. So after all of those decisions, the end result was 8 K-12 custom books that were developed within less than a year's period of time. After you received the finished product, what kind of feedback did you hear from your team and or students?
Well, they were absolutely delighted. People are really excited. Oh, you've got my quotes up there. These are a few things that I pulled from emails that were, well, they were not even solicited emails from people, that the students and the teachers really, really like these. The teachers love that now in the student workbook, all the readings from the curriculum are there. So the students can mark them right up in these consumable workbooks. They can, you know, they can do all of their work there. They have that portfolio option. So people really, really love being able to use this. And even now, my teachers are all teaching simultaneously, which means they have a limited number of teachers in front of them, students in front of them live in the classroom. And then at the same time, at the same moment, they've got the rest of the class online participating through Microsoft Teams and Canvas. And so we design processes to get the workbooks to the kids who are doing the online, and the kids in the classroom have them. And it makes it so much easier for the teacher because they have a variety of options in terms of how the students can access this and how the students can turn in their work. And the teachers are really loving that. The teacher's guide, they like being able to pull out a unit and just take that unit home when they're doing their planning, when they're doing their prep, etc. And then, you know, if they're planning for next week and we still haven't finished this week, they can have 2 units at home with them. And they don't have to, you know, bring the whole big workbook home. They don't have to bring the whole thing home. So they really like it. The vocabulary pages we added, that was one of the things that we created in-house, had the sections for the different points. And it's actually a 2-page vocabulary that includes a place for some dictations. It includes a place for our essential questions. And then it includes a spot for students' individualized vocabulary that they get as they're going through, so they can record those things. So the students really like that. They really like being able to find that. And they also like that it's not a lot of loose leaf worksheets they're getting from their teachers, like it has been for a number of years for us, that it's all a cohesive whole. It feels and looks like an actual textbook almost to them. So that's amazing.
So now that you've gone through the process, if you could identify 3 lessons learned that you'd like to share with those districts who are currently in the process of customizing or are considering customization for the future, do you mind sharing those with us?
Sure, you can see the things that I shared on the screen there. The first one, you'll need a lot of time to review things after you have the first draft together. And I was really surprised at how much reviewing we needed to do. And it was great. I think when I'm sending it off a document at a time, and I'm not saying a page at a time, but a document might be, you know, the lesson plans for unit 3 or whatever. But that's not the only thing that's in the unit 3. And so after we added the other things to it, when it would come back to me from Xanadu, it was in the format that it would look like when it was in the final product. And it really helped with that visualization. Sometimes we gave them documents and we realized, oh, that needs to be moved here or there, or that doesn't make sense to have that before that, or we need to add an additional explanation in here, or, you know, all of those little things. And so when we were creating the first draft, of course, we thought we were creating the beautiful, perfect product. But when it came back to us, it was surprising to us how much that whole process helped, that review process and sending it back to them, and then they would fix it and send it back to us to review again. And, you know, I think we went through that review process about 3, maybe even 4 times for each of the books that we created. And, you know, it was amazing. And how much we saw and we changed each time. And of course it was less and less and less each time, but and it wasn't it wasn't Xanadu's work that we were changing, it was our own work that we were changing. It was, you know, the decisions that we had made when we created it initially, and then when we saw it as the cohesive whole, we realized, oh, that just doesn't make sense the way that it is, and we're able to change it. So I think the review was a surprise for me. I didn't realize that we would need that much review time. You may not get copyright on some items. I mentioned this earlier. We didn't have copyright on all of the songs. Have a backup plan for that. We were pretty lucky. I mean, it was only a few of the songs that we didn't get copyright for. Everything else that we wanted, Xanadu was able to clear the copyright on. So there were very, very few things, but we had a backup plan. Martina sells these units on Teachers Pay Teachers, and she has the copyright to have them in digital format. So we're able to provide those in digital format for the ones that we didn't get to put in the books. We have them in digital format that we can provide for the teachers, and they can project them on their screens. And so we were lucky with that. Putting that together takes more time than you think. Give yourself enough time to do a good job. Of course, COVID-19 put a monkey wrench in that for me. I'm a very, very concrete, sequential, organized sort of person. And I didn't get to do things exactly the way that I would have liked them because of that. And I had much less help than I would have preferred to have as we finished up the project. But the good news is we got through it even with COVID-19. And, you know, I think even with the situation that the teachers are teaching in this year, it worked even in that situation. So, but I think it was surprising to me how long it took to put it together and then how much review was necessary after we got it together.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. So in addition to the lessons learned, let's talk about the word customization and some common misperceptions. So we're going to just identify 3 common misperceptions and get Pam's feedback on it. And we're going to slowly come up to the Q&A portion. I'm assuming a lot of you might have some questions you'd like to ask Pam. So on myth number 1, oftentimes the word custom has a stigma to it that it assumes that it's expensive. On the contrary, with Xanadu Publishing, you have the ability to control your budget based on the decisions you make. So Pam, can you speak briefly about your expectations with these materials and how it related to your budget overall without necessarily getting into the dollars and the cents?
Sure, of course. Well, initially when I was meeting with Destiny, I thought, well, this is too good to be true. We couldn't possibly do this with the budget that we have. And so I gave her a ballpark figure of what I thought we would be able to afford. And so then Xanadu started telling me what we could do if that was our budget, you know, what kinds of things we could do. And I will tell you that even after all of the decisions we made, all of the things and the changes, they actually came in under budget. And so that was a surprise for me because, you know, I'm not one to waste the state's money. I want to use every single penny. And so I was really counting down every cent. And it was so much more affordable than I expected it to be that we were really able to do what I wanted. And I don't feel like I did make some decisions that were based entirely on cost, but I don't feel like any of them forced me into a decision of something that I didn't really want. And that was a really pleasant surprise for me.
So myth number 2, we might be playing myth busters here. So myth number 2 is it's too complicated. And there was quite a bit of effort that you and your staff needed to put into this project. Would you say this is a myth? Why or why not?
I'm going to agree that it is tough. It's not simple, but even with the constraints of COVID-19, we got it done. So we would never in a million years have been able to do this. The copyrighted stuff that's in there, we wouldn't have been able to use any of that. The only reason we were able to do that is because you guys did the work for us. So, you know, yeah, it's complicated. It's not, I wouldn't say it's super easy, but it's definitely worth the time. You know, I keep thinking about in 5 years when they theoretically give me instructional materials money again, and all we have to do is update these and then, you know, get Xanadu to make us the new ones. And I get really happy when I think about that because all of the hard work is behind us now. This would be a much easier project when we come to the end of this 5 years. So I think that it's not, I'm not going to say that it's a super easy project, but I think that it's very satisfying to get exactly what you want. That's kind of an amazing thing.
Oh, I love this. So the final myth number 3, only the content is custom. So during the presentation, you helped us, you took us behind the curtain for the choices that you made regarding design and production. Can you talk a little bit more about custom decisions that you made that were not content related?
Yeah, we talked a little bit before about the whole idea of what kind of binding the things would have, and like with the teacher's edition, we went back and forth a couple of times on where, and then by the time we finished, if we had known at the beginning how gigantic the teacher's editions were going to be, you know, we would have gone with the decision to make them the loose leaf hole punch from the very beginning. But we did explore a lot of different options as it went through. The whole idea that we can take these resources from different places, things we created in the district, along with SOMO's curriculum and some of the other things that we pulled in, and we can make it all work together and look nice together. You know, it makes it look like a textbook, and our teachers are used to using textbooks. You know, they that's the standard. And so when we can take the custom content that ticks the boxes for us of the comprehensible input that's not available in a traditional textbook for many of the companies, and we can have our own thing that meets this need, but also gives us the student workbook that makes it so much easier for the teachers, that provides them with all those readings so that they can do the text marking and do all of the things that we want them to do to analyze the text and, you know, meet all of the standards. It's kind of amazing, and having it all come together and look so beautiful. You know, it's funny when we look at them, the people on the team and I, it's like, you know, we're all admiring our firstborn grandchild or something. It's you know, we all just have this dreamy look on our faces because it's so awesome to have that come together and have that be this product that is so helpful and so useful, and that everyone's enjoying using. So
Oh, great, thank you. So as we're approaching the end, right before the Q&A session, first and foremost, I want to thank Pam Benton, Pre-K through 12 World Language Specialist Director in Pinellas County, Florida, for your partnership and for taking the time today to participate in this webinar and share your story. Kudos to you and your team on all of the hard work completed. This webinar is focused on the development and use case for a world language program. Xanadu's K-12 custom book solution does apply to all grade levels and content areas. So in addition to the story shared today, I just want to share a couple of common use cases. So first, districts have identified gaps in their existing textbook or curriculum and have supplemented it by creating workbooks or readers. Their curriculum teams select the exact content to fit their needs, and Xanadu creates and distributes their print or digital custom book. Second use case, oftentimes large districts need assistance producing print workbooks beyond the scope of their internal printing services. Xanadu's extensive printing and distribution capabilities can solve these challenges and add quality to the printed resource with our editorial team. Third and final use case for this webinar is districts and state level partners who are creating customized curriculum utilizing open educational resources oftentimes benefit from the inclusion of high quality text excerpts or other copyrighted items. Xanadu solves the licensing and production challenges associated with these custom initiatives. So without further ado, I'd like to open up the floor for questions for Pam. If there's questions for Pam or for Xanadu, we're happy to answer those. But I'm going to pass the mic back to Chris Poza, our moderator, to address the questions.
Hi guys, we actually do have a couple of questions. We received numerous, in fact, and the overwhelming popular question is for Pam, and it's, how long did this project take you from start to finish?
We started the summer, I guess a year ago this summer. So the summer of 2019. Is that right, Tanya?
That sounds about right. Yes.
Okay, thanks. I met
Destiny's listening. She'll text me if we're wrong.
Yeah, I was just saying, Destiny, tell us if we're wrong. Destiny came and met with me. Actually, we were doing our curriculum writing in June of 2019, I think is the correct time. We were doing our curriculum writing, and Destiny came and met with me in June, and we kind of decided that we were going to work together. That happened in August, and then we did have to go through, a legal process with the contract on both sides, and we worked on it through the school year. I think I submitted the final documents to Xanadu probably in mid-June of this past summer, so summer of 20, and then we are using the materials now.
Okay, thank you. The next question that we have is also for Pam, and it's regarding cost. You've addressed this a couple of times, I think, throughout, but can you speak again to the relative, without giving numbers, of the relative cost of putting together the program that you did as it related to the other options you were considering at the start of this? Of course, you talked about undergoing textbook adoption, so I think that's what the question is referring to.
So the state gives money to the district, and the district divides that up among the departments. And this year, CTAE, which is Career, Technical, and Adult Education, was the other department area that got money. And so the state gives an amount of money, I don't know how much, to the district, and the district divides that up. And I think they determine that based on the number of students in each of the departments, and the number of students in the class. So the district gave me a total budget amount, but I have pre-K through 12 programs, and I have 7 languages that we teach. And so I had to take that budget and figure out how we were going to use it to meet the needs in all of those different languages and all of those different levels. And so I had a ballpark figure in mind of what we could spend on Spanish 1, 2, 3, which is where the bulk of our students, the very largest number of students, fall into that Spanish 1, 2, 3 category. And it was just under half of my total budget for the adoption. And so, and they actually came in under that by quite a bit, actually. It was a substantial amount, much more than I expected. So, that's I don't know how I can get more specific really without giving numbers.
No, I think that does it. I think that answered it perfectly, actually. And the last question we have real quick, actually, it's more of a request, I think, for Tanya is, will you be doing more presentations like this on other content areas such as ELA and math?
If that's something that you would like to see, we definitely need to get these moving forward. So are those the final questions, Chris?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so really quickly, I just wanted to address we do have some resources available for all of you in the chat box. There is access to a case study, and there's also access to a white paper named Authoring Student Success that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation about the amount of hours teachers are spending supplementing their materials. If you cannot download them, when you do want access to them, my contact information is on the screen. Feel free to contact me or anyone within the company. We want to make sure that you get any information that's relevant for you. For those of you who are considering custom, we welcome all conversations with a customization expert to help talk through the process, review your copyrighted materials, and ensure you're set up for success with the timeline that meets your needs. So we are very grateful that you've spent this time with us today. We wish you very good health. And once again, thank you, Pam. You did a wonderful job. We really appreciate your partnership, and stay safe in the storm.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Okay, thank you everybody for taking the time from your busy schedules to join us. You will receive a follow-up communication with a link to the recorded session if you'd like to watch it again or share it with your colleagues. We certainly encourage you to to do so. Enjoy the rest of your evening.